Another button. Welcome to Cannabis Legalization News, where today we're going to be discussing social justice in cannabis with Akele. Akele, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Akele Parnell. I'm a cannabis attorney, now soon to be an economic and community development attorney with the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. My background is started in the industry about a couple years ago, working for Green Thumb Industries, Inc., which is one of the largest multi-state operators in the cannabis space based in Chicago. There I was in-house attorney working on a wide range of transactional matters, and then also on our social impact plans and initiatives. I'm also a member of Chicago Normal, which was or is one of the main organizations in the Chicago and Illinois, in the state of Illinois too, advocating for the advancement of social equity and restorative justice and cannabis legalization.
Is GTI, I saw that was in your resume. Is GTI a medical company then?
Yeah, so they do both. It depends on the market. When Illinois was, just medical, or it is just medical now, here we sell medical cannabis. But, states like Nevada and Massachusetts, we sell medical and recreational. They sell medical and recreational cannabis.
Oh, shit. So it's a big company. It ain't just the one state.
No, it's probably the second or third biggest, probably second most valuable.
Yeah, I mean, you can buy their stock. I mean, it's OTC.
What?
You can buy it.
Yeah.
They have a stock that's out there you can buy. And how many states they're operating in? Many different states. How many states is GTI operating in?
And we have licenses. They have licenses. I'm no longer there as of a couple months ago. But I think they have licenses.
Little brand too, yeah. Like their Rhythm brand.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us about their Rhythm brand and give us some background on that? Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Expound on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's our most popular brand. Covers a wide range of products.
Quality trucker hat. Find your rhythm. Did you guys trademark that? Do you know anything about the IP of GTI?
Yeah. I mean, I know a little bit. But I don't know about the Find Your Rhythm, whether or not that's trademarked. I don't remember, but of course, there's limits on the amount of protection you can get.
Right. That's it. That's what I explained to my clients about when they talk about the IP. They're always like, "Well, should I get that protected or that protected?" I'm like, "You have to understand what this protection issue means. Okay,
Right.
You're gonna pay me to go get you this protection, and then if somebody comes, you're going to have to pay me some more money to go shut it down." And so it's an investment in something. And then is it even the right time to do it? So I'll say like, "All right, is anybody trying to steal your idea yet?" No. Well. Put it, once you get out there, sure, fine, protect yourself. But they have to understand that it's just a lot of money that you're going to be paying to a lawyer to tell some other company to do something.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing you want to do is, you want to like distribute your brand as broadly as possible and, get to the market first and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's the main way that you can protect yourself right now, until federal legalization. Although, I'm not an IP attorney, but I know the basics.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Well, I was just gonna say in cannabis and branding. I mean, and the whole it's like with Gorilla Glue. Right now it's going against everybody that's creating some shit instead of like I just made this strain that everybody like. No one's gonna IP fucking Blue Dream. That's already something old. Yeah, it's already established as something. And I think really all cannabis things are like that right now as far as when it comes to branding. Though what I've seen is like extraction processes. Like that's the way that people are saying this is my way to do to make shatter or whatever the heck. That's one way of definitely patenting and intellectual property type stuff. As far as cannabis goes. But yeah, Akele, what are you doing now as far as like, because you're the social equity guy, right? You're the
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to be, that's what I care about the most in the industry. That's why I got involved, sort of advance that from the inside. So right now I'm working with a couple teams to apply for a license in Illinois. Chicago area is ideal. So hopefully I'll be an operator soon.
That would be excellent. Hey, let's talk about how they're just kind of doing some crazy stuff, in my opinion, in Chicago. And you're probably more familiar than I am if you're that close to it. What is the way that Chicago is going to allocate licenses?
Yeah, so you probably heard of this the lottery concept.
Is that a reasonable regulation that they have the authority to do under the statute? I think it's an arbitrary regulation.
Right. Okay.
Well, let's talk about how Chicago is going to try to roll this out. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah. So the first step is you get a license from the state. The state handles the licensing. They create the licensing regime. They issue the licenses. So after you get a license from the state, then you have to go through zoning approvals at the city level. So in Chicago, they've come up with, and the ordinance just passed, I think a week ago or a couple weeks ago, the ordinance passed that will create a lottery for people with state licenses to apply to get, the initial zoning approval for the location of their dispensaries. And so the way that's going to be handled, at least in terms of your appearance before, the zoning board, will be through a lottery. So we don't know all the ins and outs of that because they haven't issued like regulations on that. That's sort of the next big thing that the city has to figure out is, how are they going to handle the lottery? I think it's going to be interesting.
Well, I think the city's going to get sued because how is that reasonable? Because the municipality, unless there's some carve out in the statute that I haven't read that's germane only to the city of Chicago, wouldn't surprise me. But I just don't know if that a lottery is a reasonable zoning restriction to the applicant who was awarded that license by the state. And now you're going to make that person, because that person is on a time bomb. I mean, like not a time bomb, but they have an expiring window of approximately 1 year from the time that they're awarded the license to the time that they open. So is this lottery going to just totally screw over? Like, what if your teams get totally messed up? Because you got your application in order, it gets highly scored, it's approved. Get open.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it creates an issue, especially for social equity applicants. So for one, the regular licensees, the current medical operators, they still got to figure out where all their locations are going to be and all that. And, of course they have, the head start. And then, we have this, these new 47 licenses are going to be issued in the Chicagoland area, and we got to figure out how those are going to be allocated. But so the city should want to prioritize social equity applicants, and putting them in the same bunch as everybody else is not advantageous to them. Doesn't really advance that. And then it's probably not exactly fair because, say you have, you're from a certain neighborhood, you probably have, relationships with real estate agents in that neighborhood. Maybe you already own property and all that. And so ideally you would be sure that you would be able to locate your dispensary there, especially if you're a social equity applicant. I mean, you should be able to go wherever you.
Yeah, you should. And that makes your application stronger because while you're not required to disclose that, it shows you that you're really trying to show them, here's the award, here's when I'm open. And throwing this wrench of a lottery into it that's saying, oh, you won? Well, we'll let you know if you win again. And then you can open it. That's ridiculous.
That's in Chicago?
Yeah.
It's Chicago. You know how that goes. Right. Chicago is its own little... Chicago's like imperialistic in Illinois. And so Illinois plays by the rules.
Yeah.
Unless you're in Chicago. Then it's totally different. Yeah.
It's like Seattle and Washington. But, our transition fucked a lot of people, too, in the sense that... it was a requirement. Well, first off, we had medical first, and I really wish we did it like Oregon did, where it was just turnkey. Okay, you're medical today. Tomorrow, you're going to be recreational. Here, they fucked so many people over because at the time, I think we had like 1,000 dispensaries. And in those 1,000 dispensaries, probably 60% of them were from seed to sale. The person in charge or the person behind it was a grower and also the storefront. And then Washington slice and dice the whole market. They said, okay, to get a license, you have to prove you have the lease agreement and all this stuff, all these prerequisites. Now you get your license. And then months down the line, say there's a moratorium or something. Now you're fucked. Now all your stuff's gone. Every investment that you put into is just wasted. And it seems like for you guys with the social equity applicant type thing, I mean, the whole emphasis is social equity, right? Like, this person should get a pass. This person's like, hey, while you're fucking up the rules.
You have to understand, it's 20%. It's like, we're trying to fix this, and you're not going to really be able to be allowed in unless you address this 20%. And so every single cannabis winner, I think they should all be at least 51% owned and controlled by the social equity applicants. Otherwise, you shouldn't get the points unless I have this conversation with some clients where I'm like, well, tell me about your coffee shop, or tell me about your company that currently is social equity status because you have those full-time employees and you would qualify. And if you don't have that, I just think it's disingenuous to start a company and like go to the state. And like you're basically saying to the state, hey, I have hired these 10 people. And then you go, oh, really? Where are these 10 people from? Well, I've put them all on payroll. And what do you do, sir? I sell cannabis. Do you have a license to sell? No, I don't. I am petitioning for my license. And if you don't give it to me, you see those 10 social equity people I gave jobs to, and they're just getting paid right now. I'm going to fire them. And then I'm going to sue you. It's just such a Chicago way to kind of look at the social equity issue. And I'm like, did you read the statute? But they, and then did you see what the state did over the weekend? Like for Friday?
No. Before I want to go back to that third prong that you're talking about, the 10 full-time employees. Yeah, I have an issue with that one. I mean, I thought the point of the social equity program was to, increase ownership in the industry, particularly. Of course, you want to increase diversity in those who are, participating in the industry, have jobs and all that. But 10 full-time employees thing, I feel like that's one set up for current operators to hire folks that are impacted persons to work in the dispensary, or, I guess it could be full-time in different capacities, but I mean, it seems like, they would just be like bud tenders, managers, stuff like that. Right. But it doesn't address the ownership piece. So, any well-funded, well-capitalized, company that has no diversity at the management level could meet that prong and take advantage of the social equity applicant status.
Boom. Yeah. And that's the problem. And that's what I'm saying. I'm like, wait, you're not going to give them any ownership? I mean, it's right there. And then if you read own and control, the ownership and control is like literally a defined term in the definition. And then it talks about ownership, both in the profit and the loss. So like when we're talking about those horror stories up in Washington State where all these people get screwed over and there's these furloughs that go on because you have one layer of government that says X and another layer of government that says Y, and the permit lies somewhere in between. And they're setting that up with the city of Chicago with their lottery system. I'm like, okay, because think about the social equity applicants that are going to be in the city of Chicago. There's a lot. If you look at the blue dots on the proportion map, that's where they're at. And so are they just all going to get strung out and then just die somewhere from lack of money?
Well, what I think, and so I work with a lot of social equity applicants now. Of course, all the applications that I'll be a part of will be social equity, applicants. And one of the big things, one of our big concerns is that they'll be taken advantage of by people that just want to put a name on an application and then submit and take advantage of it, try to, use a workaround to extract most of the profits out. I think, the regulators actually did a good job on the ownership and control piece, because they mentioned, 10% of the ownership and the control and the profits and all that going to the social equity owners. And I think it'd be interesting how people try to get around that. I think we'll have more clarity when, the IDPR releases their responses to the questions. Can we do good companies do MFAs, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because the IPFR, they put this out on Friday where they just gave us a punt. So the notice, the high volume of applications. So they were supposed to, I can get that out of the way. Oh, crap. And so they were supposed to answer questions about the actual application. And so they probably got jammed from all these types of social equity questions that we're discussing. And they punted for a whole week. But then think about, we've talked about these new regulations that are coming in and the state having to take these times. And they actually also had to correct their application. And they're trying their darndest. They really are, to get the application done in a timely fashion and get it open. But it would not surprise me if deadlines get pushed back. Because getting more confusion by the day as opposed to less,
What's Illinois's record legal date? What's your expected first store to open? January 1st?
Yeah, but those that are established. Yeah, go. Akele, I mean, you probably know a lot of the dispensaries that are going to be the ones that open on the first of the year. How many licenses did GTI control?
So I think they got the first 5 of the adult use, conditional adult use licenses that were issued. And then I think at this point there's 11, but that's not in Chicago. That's statewide. So mostly the suburbs. I think there's only one. I think Bedmar is the only one that got approved in the city limits of Chicago. I mean, I expect a lot of other dispensaries. I think there's like 11 in the actual city limits of Chicago right now. I expect most of those to get approved by January 1 or shortly thereafter. But right now it's not looking like there's going to be a lot of dispensaries in Chicago open come January 1.
But not those are recreational ones, though. You're talking about, right? Yeah. Because in Washington, we had the medical, and then they said, okay, recreational is going to happen on this date, and that's when stores were supposed to open up, and they did, of course. I don't know the exact date, but and I imagine you guys are still trying to create that infrastructure too, as far as where the guy picks up his seed or where they pick up the farms. And then the storefronts and whatnot, establishing that structure. But that's pretty wild, dude. Hey, you know how you could fix the social equity issue, Tom?
No.
Homegrown. I think Akele.
I'm pretty sure that Illinois did a real good job of fixing the social equity. That was just the most recent piece that I did for the Cannabis Law and Regulation Reporter, where I kind of went around them. And so Maryland does a pretty good job too. They'll give like 15%, but then they have a big glaring loophole in Maryland's where it says, and if you couldn't do it, just give your good faith answer as to why. And it may not count. And I'm like, wow, that's weird. But Maryland had, talk about loopholes, but it wasn't as bad as Ohio's. Ohio's was really racist and just like totally optional. And you're reading it and you're just like, man, do these people not even care? But Illinois, because they gave the 20% of the points and then the competition level. So in Maryland, they had 200 applications for 4 licenses.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and that's where they had a social equity component of 15% for similar to what we're doing in Illinois with the ownership and control. And it's interesting, the corporate formation documentation. So I have a lot of clients that I'm helping them with that because that's a very high level complex issue, and you need to have it done right because it becomes contingent on your license when you're approved. So waiting, and I'm like sitting there and I have the stuff ready, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to change these, and then you don't get the answers back to the questions you've asked. So you're like, I'm going back on break.
So is this like a limbo area for you guys still as the lawyers trying to help your clients or whoever you're associating with?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lack of clarity on some key issues and important issues on how you can structure your business, and especially as it relates to, I think, management services agreements, stuff like that. I mean, that's pretty common in the industry generally, but how does that relate to the 51% ownership and control requirement? I'm not doing with social equity applicants. I'd like to hear your thoughts, Tom, on that.
What's that?
Management services agreements and social equity applicants.
I think management service agreements make some interesting idea. Okay. How much operational experience do you have? Does your team really have? And so who's going to be operating that cannabis facility on day one so that it runs smoothly? Like if there's some type of partnership or it's a service agreement, what's the time duration of the service agreement? What does it specify and call for? And so if it's one of these things where it's training, because if you look at the ownership and control element of it, it talks about management of the day-to-day activities. And so if you're doing management of the day-to-day activities, you should be the owner who's probably the agent in charge then. However, you've never been trained as this job, and you don't have anybody who's got like management experience in that job. So having a partnership with somebody who operates dispensaries in other states, or even in the state of Illinois, if there's 10 dispensaries in Chicago or 11, there's operational knowledge out there. Those people could easily form consulting companies and have contracts to help teach the next 49 or whatever, and then if that's what it's a partnership of, and it lasts like for a duration of 12 months or something, as opposed to, your Verizon bill, which you just never get rid of. It's just always there. But to the extent that they're used as a vehicle to suck out all the profits of the company and leave the equity owners with zero, no.
Right. Yeah, that's a no-go.
Akele, one of the reasons why I bring up homegrown, because one of the barriers I see in this whole situation, and I brought it up last week with Danielle, and of course she zoned out the blip or whatever, but the glitch that we had. I had an email from a black gentleman from Oregon who's trying to get, in the industry as far as he wants to have his own garden. And that's why I say home grow. What I witnessed out here in Washington was people who just were gardeners, not savvy business people, not they're industrious to the point of just growing. And then they would go to the store and sell their weed. Because that's how it worked here. I could grow my 13 plants as a patient, and then I'm like, oh, this is too much for me. I'll go to the dispensary down the street, see if they like it, and then they would buy it from me. And I mean, these cats built revenue. They built that capital that, to get into this business, Tom and I talked about, you need hundreds of thousands. It's not like
it's a legit business. I mean, it's not expenses, man.
So what do you recommend for people to get that capital for minorities? Where can we tap into? Because this is still federally illegal. This is still a thing. Where can I get help?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, so it depends on the market. It's going to be different in Washington. It's going to be different in states where, licenses are more easily accessible because, that creates, more competition. So it's harder to, run and sustain your business. But, in states like Illinois, where there's, limited licenses, I think that the main hurdle is getting that initial license for social equity applicants and getting the pursuit capital. So I think for a social equity applicant, once they get that license, they'll be able to raise, they can be picky about who they want to raise money.
The license is the asset. Nice. And so one of the things that I'm trying to, explain to my social equity applicant clients is trying to figure out how they can fund putting together a high quality application, which can cost over 6 figures. And then you're like, okay, well, that's just the application, putting it together and everything's nice and ready to go. It gets more expensive when you win, and so they have to know that. And so, if there's a way that through, now when you have to do offering memorandums or something where you're trying to actually shop these investments for that, because they got 49% to give, that's marketable. That's a marketable thing.
As you're saying, though, it takes us 6 figures to get just the application. I mean, now you're talking about speculation. Like, hey, I really love weed. There, guy with $1 billion. Will you give me 200,000 so I can just apply for this? How are we going to get past that barrier? Just to fill out the application.
There are a lot of organizations and funds out there that are looking to partner with social equity applicants and, minority operators and provide funds and sometimes even, pre-license services and all that. So I think the best way for them to find those people is do your homework already, come up with a business plan, sort of put the basic pieces and framework of your business together. And then I think go to a lot of these networking events and, when there's speakers and panels.
That right there, Akele. I mean, this is something that I'm a Southern California raised Mexican that, my mom was a teenage mom. I wasn't taught infrastructure or good business sense. My grandfather was a brilliant dude that he did a lot of things that were Trump-like, but he made a lot of money doing his thing. Yeah. You're talking about the business plan. We have a lack of business sense in the minority community. But it's not just minority community. I think it's just like shitty neighborhood situational type thing because we're in this area of America. We like with Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Black Wall Street. It's proven we're not more special or less intelligent. We're all in the same field now. But how do we learn that business sense and how do I build that? Where's my check marks for my list of things to do? Like one business plan. What kind of business plan? I was at an investor meeting. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I was at an investor meeting and I asked this guy, I was like, what do you guys look for? How can I get your money? It's pretty much what I'm asking, And he's like, well, what we look for, I like to see an exit plan. I have no exit plan. I'm just trying to.
You need an exit plan. Like all my social equity presidents have an exit plan. It's like, where would you like to be in 3 years? How about this?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have that shit. I don't think about that because I'm just trying to establish a thing to do.
I know, but that's why I'm not paying you.
And that's the problem. That's part of the problem with, trying to get that traditional sort of venture capital and all that stuff is that, they're looking for when can I get a return on my investment? And, social equity applicant or people, that are really integrated in their communities, they're probably thinking, I want to run this dispensary long. I'm not looking to sell my dispensary so you can, recoup your investment. They want that to be there long term and they want it to be, minority owned or owned by people from that community.
Something I want to give my kids.
Put that together, but that's not necessarily reflective of the tumultuous nature of the cannabis industry. If it turns out that it is something where there's a lot of M&A and there's a lot of people that'll go broke, I don't know, man. Just because if you are going to be shopping it for money, though, and especially if you're going to have to take on investors to capitalize the business, there you're going to have to speak their language. You're going to have to talk about it, strategies and where you're going to get out. But like, how are you framing your social equity corporate structures?
Yeah, I mean, so the entities that I'd be involved with, I mean, I want them to be, I want our minority ownership to be as high as possible, and our social equity applicant, ownership to be as high as possible. Right. Considering the fact that we still need to raise funds 9 times out of 10 from folks that don't qualify as social equity applicants. So I think, the key for us in our applications is bringing the team. And so, whether it's social equity applicants with industry experience, because, we have some of those, and, social equity applicants with business experience, but then also, persons on the team that are, whether they qualify as social equity applicants or not, that are just really integrated in the community, been doing work in the community, are business savvy and all that. So
what, is that something you're doing? Oh, go ahead.
And then I was going to say, I sort of missed your question about the structure. I don't want to give away the secret sauce, but not that there is
a secret sauce very long. I mean, it's one of the things that when you're in the operational aspects of the cannabis industry, or it's a business, and you see like how things are getting run, you're like, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. You find out what works and you do it. I mean, that's one of the hallmarks of like business. I mean, if you are a great operator, you're going to do things a specific way. I mean, I always kind of find it ironic that the standard operating procedures are confidential information. You're like, wait, shouldn't they be standardized? Well,
right. But they are, yeah.
Yeah. Because that means a good way to do business, no matter what. There's always a good practice.
Best practices, standard operating procedures.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I think cannabis has given a lot of people is a sense of business. Like, all right, I can grow this plant. It costs me $600 to grow it to this nice flowery state. If I sell it for $1,000, I make a profit. And then do you take that $400 and reinvest it in yourself, or do you go out to a casino? I mean, that's right. That's the second step.
Money management is important.
Yeah,
right. For sure.
I mean. So Akele, with THC staffing, is this something that you're doing as well when you're integrating with or interfacing with applicants? Are you trying to help them maybe with licenses or get deeper into the industry?
Yeah. So when I'm working with potential licensees, that's usually separate. That's just in my practice, as a solo practitioner. But with staffing, we'll work with applicants on their staffing plans, and know a lot of people in the industry, so we know a lot of good candidates, and some are social equity applicants with industry experience who are looking to partner with potential businesses that are pursuing licenses. So we can help them structure their their business and their applications so that it's consistent with the goals of the social equity plan or program.
Because like a lawyer, you're wearing like 3 hats, right? I mean, you're working at the group, then you have your own practice, and then you're part of a minority. What was the lawyer aspect of that?
Oh, so once this sort of application season is over, then I'll be starting a new job with Chicago Lawyers Committee of Civil Rights. So I'll be doing equitable development work with them to develop small businesses and cooperatives and their capacity, and doing some policy advocacy to sort of promote the same thing in Chicago. So
that's awesome. Like, one of the things that I like about the cannabis industry is the weed sells itself. And so it does give the people an opportunity to start learning from business in a legitimate way and then teaching that to other people. And so the dispensaries, I don't remember them having the specific obligation to have something that addresses the economic development in disproportionately impacted areas, like I did specifically for the craft grows and for the infuser licenses. But if you look at the overall tenets of the law, then you kind of understand what your company's culture should be. And that's a very interesting policy impression into the industry. And so I think that's one of the reasons why Illinois' variety of the cannabis game is a little bit different than it is on the West Coast. You know, it's a more woke version of cannabis because they've literally injected the new capitalism, social justice into the statute.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's some things that, you know, I would change about the bill, but, you know, I think it does deserve the title as the most, equity focused bill in the country. And part of that is because,
and I would say it's efficacious social equity that they've put into it. Sometimes it's window dressing. This one, you can't thread that needle and get that license unless you come from the position of the social equity. And then for repairing, because like it was a pretty glaring omission. And, you know, before we went live, you were actually talking about Bernie Sanders's cannabis plan.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
that's right.
I mean, does it go to the same type of extent that Illinois does to empower ownership in those people that have been the most harmed by the law?
Yeah, I think it does. And, you know, this is the first time that I've seen a bill proposed at the federal level. I mean, it's not a bill, but, you know, sort of framework for federal legalization that touches on social equity to the degree that this does, you know. And so I know there's the Marijuana Justice Act, which I, you know, fully supported.
Right.
You know, there's been other legalization bills and sort of frameworks proposed, but this one touches on, you know, reparative justice. So there's something, you know, there's setting aside a certain amount of funds to reinvest in communities harmed by the war on drugs. It includes expungements, but it also includes business development fund at the federal level to help develop, you know, minority businesses and businesses owned by people harmed by the war on drugs. And I think it sets aside a significant amount of money to promote that. That's not something that I'd seen before.
Well, think about what IRC 280E is bringing in, and let me share my screen right here. Look at that. That's a big effing number right there. You know, it's a lot of tax revenue, and it's a lot of jobs. And you know, if you do that, I mean, if IRC 280E is sitting on top of the retail aspect of the industry and making it basically double taxed, man, the IRS is just fine with this illegal marijuana. And I mean, it's like free money to the government, you know?
Yeah. I like how you refer to it as woke legalization.
Yeah, it's the most woke bill.
He's not lying, man. I mean, like literally read the flipping laws all over. Like LA's, it's just bizarre. And then like what they did in Massachusetts has a nice one, but then they make you only access the benefit of the social equity after you've gotten the license, so you never get the license. And so that's like the throughput of Massachusetts. That's the other darn thing, because you're looking at all these laws in a comparative landscape to see which ones are working the best. And, you know, you kind of mix up some states sometimes.
Does Illinois, because I mean, you guys are doing so well, at least with the creation of the law. And, you know, and I think people underestimate, because I mean, you guys are kind of a flyover state. I mean, you know,
so
yeah.
you got Chicago, but that's it.
Not a flyover city.
That's it. I mean, you got Chicago, but there's nothing I don't think about. Let's go to Peoria. You know, like Wayne's World.
Nobody ever says let's go to Peoria. That's why we left. Yeah.
But my thinking here is, son of a bitch, I almost zoned out there. Because I mean, this is the thing. So does Illinois have, like in Washington, we have people serving sentences, you know, federally, residents, Landsclore is one. And then also recently in Normal put up that stat where, you know, we're still increasing our arrest. What in Illinois, are there people serving time from the state? Do you guys are you aware of any of that? I mean, that's something I think would be a hustle.
So, yeah, I mean, there are people serving time for cannabis offenses in Illinois.
Wow.
And, you know, I don't know, you know, the brain people.
But I don't know the stats. You could find out, I guess.
But I mean, wouldn't addressing the social equity in your own state be like, all right, here's automatically 100 points or whatever, just being in jail? Boom, you're the guy.
No, they actually bifurcated the levels of that. So provided, I don't know how much you can maximally get punished for, like, in possession of a pound. I've never been a criminal attorney. Akele, have you only been commercial?
Yeah, I've only been, you know, commercial, M&A, all that stuff. So.
Right, yeah. We can nerd out about that, but that's
a
different world. And so it's like, radiology versus, I don't know, orthodontists. I mean, they both have degrees. Sure, they know a lot, but it's totally different. Yeah.
But like, what your guys' criteria though? What's the if you're were found in violation of law for X amount of weed? It just seems silly to me. Why have an plant amount for being in trouble with the fucking plant? Like, why is this even a stipulation?
I agree. I would expunge or seal all cannabis convictions. And people that are in jail for cannabis or typically still or in prison for cannabis are probably in prison for additional charges as well.
But like if you get caught with a gun, isn't that one of those things? And so, like, of course, you're moving weight. You're moving weight in I mean, like, duh, I got to protect myself here.
100%.
Yeah.
That should be I think
yeah, safe access is another argument for fucking legalization.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I mean, like, I have no problem with the concept that this stuff was untaxed. Like, right. Mm-hmm. You're not supposed to be dealing in untaxed booze or cigarettes or anything like that, but make them pay a fine. Don't make us pay for them and ruin their lives at the same time, Right.
If there's no violent crime associated with it, then I don't see a purpose or benefit in continuing to incarcerate people, and especially beyond a certain amount of time. It's not rehabilitating anybody. It's not making society safer.
I don't think any prison rehabilitates. I mean, it looks like, from my review of how the prisons are structured and organized and operating, that looks like a goddamn powder keg waiting to go off. What are you doing with these people? Yeah.
Well, we talked to Weldon last week, and the prison guards. I try and look at life as like everybody's just that's some dude doing their job that day. It's like my bus driver. I get on a bus. I try to be nice because like he's just doing his job. Like, I appreciate you for just showing up. Like, I work in tech, and so I worked on the bad side of tech where I've had to the checks and balances aren't there. It's kind of like you see how the meat's made. You're like, oh, this is fucked up. I really don't ever want to go to the hospital again or anything that, I just don't trust anything because things that you feel are supposed to be in the checks and balances aren't really checks and balances because checks and balances are just fucking paperwork. And if you have someone good at paperwork, those checks and balances. Hey, nice. I like that.
Hey, I hit the wrong button. That's what happens when I am producing my own show on the fly. Sometimes are a good thing, especially live on YouTube.
And, especially with you guys with as lawyers. I mean, you guys picked a good field to. It's kind of lawyers are what makes the world go around, at least, or keeps us civil.
They literally wrote the Constitution.
Well, wasn't one of them like what were their jobs beforehand? That's the thing. Like, who makes a king a king? You just wake up one day and go, I'm king of you because I can. Right. I'm bigger. There's no real set criteria about like what we are.
Well,
you just got.
Go ahead. I'll let
No, I'm just yabbering, dude.
I talk too much. Yeah.
Well, you are a lawyer.
Processes involved in coming up with the Constitution and choosing who would be the leader and all that.
And we'll talk at the point of like orthodontist versus pediatrician. I mean, you guys are in your own lane doing like Keely. Tom's background is contracts and banking. What's like your lawyer background?
Yeah, so my legal background, I mean, I went to law school like, most people to do public interest. I was going to be a criminal attorney or human rights, public, civil rights attorney. I did that my first summer. I worked for Lawyers for Human Rights in South Africa. Did criminal law. That was the last time that I did any criminal law.
Wow. South Africa?
Yeah.
That's pretty dope. I mean, obviously law is like murder's bad everywhere.
Murder's bad everywhere. There's a distinction in like types of law. And so in America, we have what they call a common law. In other places, they have the civil law. And it's a very nuanced distinction. But what do they have in South Africa? Is it common or civil law?
And so South African law is kind of based on the British system. So there's a lot of similarities between the American and,
yeah.
They were also,
I was in Hong Kong, dude, like 15 years ago when I was in Navy. And I met a magistrate. She called herself a magistrate and told me that they wore the wigs when they go to, this is right in a turnover when they did that. And I was just kind of like mind blown picturing a bunch of Chinese people wearing the wigs. I'm like, I mean, the wig thing's just silly anyways. I mean, when the white people do it, it's still silly, but still, I was like, what? Why should they carry it over?
They should stop doing that.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't understand the wigs. What is up with those? Why? And like, I'm glad we don't adopt that. We still have the black robe. That I kind of get. It represents impartiality. It's
Right.
to me, I think it does.
Well, wasn't there like a talcum powder, like kind of like a hallucinogenic in there? Like maybe it was the lead. Like, hey, I mean, if you're gonna fucking argue about shit, you might as well be a little on. You know,
I don't know.
That explains some of the decisions they made like a long time in writing in the old English language. That would explain that.
So you, since you were in South Africa, and that was the last time you did criminal. So you in the states wide, you're more into like the policy. Then is that what you've been doing?
So I came back from that, and then sort of changed my focus to commercial transactional law. Got interested in healthcare. Got started.
Contracts the size of a phone book.
Yeah, and that was the next thing I didn't know was coming. But sort of joined the firm. Thought I was going to be in the healthcare group. Ended up in the corporate group, and then the next thing I know, I'm a corporate transactional attorney and all that. Did M&A, securities, public company work, all that stuff. And then got the opportunity to join the cannabis industry. I've been a fan of the plant, of course, for a while.
That was my question for you. Yeah, you're a consumer then.
Yeah, I'm patient and a consumer. That's right.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, but that's really awesome that you're able to fall out into an area of the law where the cannabis industry is exceeding. It's like it's M&A and corporate structuring, but on steroids. Well, it's kind of like healthcare. Just the amount of the federal regulation. Well, not the federal, they're the state regulations that you're under, and then the demand for the licenses is just if you're in those areas of law, it's fascinating.
That's right. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Anything cannabis. Now, if you're a fan of the plant, I think you should be a fan of the law. As I've gotten older and I've been doing this more and more, I see them being more surrounded by lawyers, and it kills me. Here in Seattle, we have Cultiva Law, they have a space on the 39th floor in Seattle. It's the highest balcony in downtown. And it's a pretty cool spot to smoke a joint over a balcony of everybody and think, God damn, these guys make a shit ton of money to fucking have this spot and whatnot. Yeah. But, the legality of it all, here in Washington, one of the things that killed us as we were going from medical to recreational, the recreational cats were very against the non-taxing that happened in the medical side of things. They were like, well, why do I have to pay tax when these guys are getting away with it? So what they did is they created this fucked up group, like this patients care group. And they passed this law called the Compassion Act, SB 5052, which killed a lot of the loopholes that people were surviving under the medical side for or with. That just killed medical outright out here. I just think people realize that there is a huge recreational dollar being pushed to know where everything's at. And it's kind of bullshit because, like Tom was saying earlier, the plant sells itself, and as I say about free home grows, and I think I had the luxury and pleasure of witnessing a real capitalistic market, free capital where people just planted a seed, made a little money, and then started evolving into this. Like, we had farmers markets here. Yeah. It was fucking insane. Farmers markets. You walk in, there was jars of weed, tens of pounds, because it takes a lot of weed to make concentrates and real medicine. Yeah. And also, it's not, people are in this oppression. Like when Tommy Chung got raided, they found a pound of weed in like a drawer or some shit, and they were like, well, what's this for?
That offense would be expungable. A pound of weed is fine to be caught with before June 25th, which is just ridiculous. I mean, because a pound is still over the limit, right? Yeah. Now they're going to have this new law where it's like, it's my ounce, I'm good.
Yeah.
You have a pound though. Is it going to be the same flipping crime still? And then you could just expunge it or what? How are they going to enforce that thing?
And even why is that worth prosecuting, or chasing or ruining someone's day or life over? 2 weeks ago, I was at a trial. I popped in here in Washington. We were still prosecuting people from shit from 2016 out here. There's an Asian American gentleman out here. He was pursued by the city of Kent, who's not very cannabis friendly. They've never been cannabis friendly out here. He was picking up rent at a renter's house that his dad owned. And while he was there, when the raid happened, because they had plants there, and he was already implicated that those were his plants. And so now, 3 years later, he had to make a plea agreement. Now he's got to do community service and pay a couple $1,000 in fines, which would break me. I'd be like, oh fuck, I owe $2,000. But luckily, he's a good businessman. He's doing his own thing. But the fact that he didn't get charged and this whole thing was happened for 3 years, it's ridiculous in a legal state. Just like the still arrests out there in Illinois, the woke state.
Yeah, but they can't prove it. That was because I'm not a criminal lawyer, but one of the lawyers in our office is. He's a very good one. His name's Jeff Hall. And so he was talking about how now, and I wrote about it in the spring, how because of the way they've created the Farm Bill, and then all the states adopted the Farm Bill's definition of industrial hemp with its 0.3% Delta 9 THC level. And if you're growing flower under the perfect conditions, a lot of medical grade cannabis, particularly from the Verano brand, will be coming in at industrial hemp levels. So the THCA might be 30%, but the Delta 9 level is less than the 0.3%. So technically perfect by definition. It satisfies the term of art that is industrial hemp under federal law. Keep it away from fire,
It just seems a lot of wasted tax dollars and time. That's all in my,
100%.
Yeah.
And, that sort of goes off into the larger conversation about, what should be criminalized and what shouldn't be criminalized and drug legalization in general. I mean, I'm certainly of the opinion that people shouldn't be incarcerated for possessing a pound of weed or really any amount necessarily. But, I understand. Law enforcement has concerns about, people dealing in illicit market because sometimes it does involve, violence to enforce contracts and all that kind of stuff. But I think the right solutions are not incarceration,
Oh, for sure. I mean, people are jumping onto this whole, and I've always stand by the cannabis legalization, always will. And I actually support all legalization, but I don't champion that because let's just get one fucking thing at a time. And this is one's really hard. And then once the country's on the same page and realizes, shit, the zombie apocalypse, we have to treat addiction. We have to, rehab.
I thought it was a crime. Oh, our policy's been stupid.
Yeah, like there's no point for the DEA. We have people protecting their jobs. It's what they're doing. They're not trying. They don't care about us.
Well, go ahead. I'm going to let you talk.
I was going to say, in a lot of ways, it has become a source of revenue for, local, state, and federal government to, fund a range of projects and stuff. And to a large degree, the war on drugs has just been extracting wealth and, funding other projects in government. And that's not right. So.
No, it isn't. And I don't like how they're using that same type. We talked about our woke system here in Illinois, and the DEA and the drug prohibition and criminalization in general represents a caricature. So a grotesque disformation on that same concept, because why does the DEA and all these drug laws exist? To keep you from being bad. So you're going to be a good thing as opposed to somebody who's evil. What you're doing is wrongful. I mean, then that's why it became a crime, and then just railroaded this concept of addiction, or that you're allowing cigarettes and alcohol, but you're not allowing this. Why are you killing your people when you could be directing them to this thing that they could use, which is less harmful to them? It makes no sense. But
yeah, I mean, and with cannabis in particular, we know the history from the 30s to the war on drugs ramping up in the 60s, that it was all about misinformation. The entire program was created with political goals in mind that, the Nixon administration had, demonizing, the anti-war left and African Americans, after civil rights and all that. So it was never really about the plan, dangerous to society. It was always about politics and money.
That's right.
Yeah. It's unfortunately, no one ever looked at the TSA and go, really? Heroin and weed?
Yeah, right. Same thing, right?
Well, again, they spelled marijuana with an H back in 1970. So I guess 1970, America didn't speak Spanish.
Right.
Spelled with an H.
But, I think it was a different world back then, too. I mean, the border issue back then, there was none. I mean, there's Lowell and Hardy. So being a Southern California boy, half the shit we see is all propaganda anyways, right? From some fear-mongering police state person that wants you to be afraid of the next brown guy or whatever, there's always got to be a reason that you're scared of something. And I remember as a kid, dude, before the border shit, as far as it was an open border, you're going through, but what they're stopping was people bringing in 200 bottles of tequila to try and make they're protecting the tariffs. They were Yeah, they're not protecting you from the family that's trying to get across to mow your lawn and fucking clean your house. No, they're protecting tariffs. And that was the whole purpose of the borders when I was a kid. Like that was not this whole citizenship that America First type crap. You know, the whole premise of it, America was like the guiding light, the shining fucking, you know, a place where we can all be free. And we're not free when these assholes with fucking money and propaganda are steering this conversation of fear, you know? And that's what this plant has had for, 100 years. It's just fear propaganda against it. I have one right here. She's dying. I brought my plant inside from outside. We're just getting a cold snap. And these plants are not friendly to, like, change, man. Do you grow, Akele? Have you tried?
No, I have not tried. I'm afraid to try. I probably would ruin it, and it would be terrible.
Are you looking forward to it? Because, hey, you said you're a medical patient. You have a place that you live. Are you gonna try to grow some plants?
You know, when I find out and buy a place, then that's something I'm gonna look into right now. And you know, it's another issues. You know, it'll be legal to grow.
There's some very cheap. There's some very cheap houses in Peoria, Illinois, in disproportionately impacted areas, and they have basements.
That's true.
That's my one regret is not growing when it was medical here, because I could be a part of this game that these guys are doing now. Like I said, you grow your shit. It was too much for your own consumption, so you just took it down the street, and I made a couple $1,000 and start that process over again. And that's how it was. And that's my issue with home grow, because it gives not just the consumer, but the person a chance to be a fucking successful business person. You know, that's what we're talking about. A chance for everybody.
There's taxation, supply concerns. How does the how does the state government wet its beak? You know, you're just cutting them out. It's that libertarian aspect of Washington State that we just do not get in Illinois.
But they'll wet their beak when I finally get my $200,000 to be a player into the recreational market, because that's gonna be the thing. That's your transition. You don't want to have that nickel and dime selling all the time. You want to save up a lot of that cash, whatever you want to call it, slush fund, and then invest into this recreational real business market, because now no one's going to fuck with my money because it's all legal, right? I mean, all these, that's why I don't fear about big marijuana, because if big marijuana takes over this whole conversation, these assholes with money don't want to go to jail, and they'll fix the rules so nobody goes to jail for the plant, because their business inherently is going to be illegal for a home grow. You know, everything they do is going to be illegal. And that's why I think, you know, people are still fearing the home grow, but I think it's a big issue. I think it's an essential part of this whole legalization process that, you know, we're further than we ever been or have been. But until that happens, only people with money can be players in this game, you know?
That's true. And hopefully the Illinois, you know, social equity program will start to address that. You know, one of the downsides is that, you know, it does give existing operators a head start, but the flip side to that is it, you know, provides a source of funding for social equity applicants, which is, you know, they're missing in most programs. So,
and then the Safe Banking Act, if you could bank your cannabis business, that would also open, that would make capitalization requirements come down substantially and open way more doors for the social equity applicants. Because I mean, imagine if you had I don't see any. Well, it's an asset in and of itself. And so if it was legal to bank, if you're awarded that asset, the bank would be like, you have what? Great. You know,
what's that? So with that, the money provided from this, your guys' bill, how much was that? It was like 800,000?
I think there's like a $30 million fund.
Oh, it's a $30 million fund. So
yeah,
as my equity applicant, I mean, how do I tap into this? And because I mean, just to be me, I want 200,000, please, so I don't have to get many investors. I want to try and just do this on my own. So how do I get into that?
Well, one, you got to get the license. So there's no like pre-license pursuit capital, which is, you know, one of the downsides. But, you know, once you do get the license, you can apply, but it's not clear how much you're going to be able to get. There's going to be a lot of demand for that money. And so we don't know how that's going to get broken up. You also be able to apply for grants. So you probably
huge.
Like, but then think about it, like, because you can't get it until you get it. So you got to get the license to get the money, and you can't get the license without the money. You're stuck in a catch-22, because in the license app, you still have to show that you're going to be adequately capitalized to open your doors. And you can say that you're going to be asking for money, but, you know.
So like the recommendation would be like, if you're trying to be an equity applicant, first you need to get the money for the license application. Like that's your first boundary. That's your barrier. Like you were saying. Fuck.
And well, yeah, and that's the thing, and Tom talked a bit on this just now. You want to have money pre-license, and then you want to show in your application that you actually have access to money post-license too. And I don't think that the strongest application is going to be the one that says, well, we're going to apply for loans from the state, because maybe that's only $30,000 or something. That's not enough to stand up your business. So.
Oh yeah, and not a guarantee.
No, and not at all guaranteed.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's difficult, but I mean, in theory, this is going to open up the cannabis industry to new players like that we've never seen. And Siri thinks I'm talking to her, but also it's not that they've created these limitations. So like, okay, Siri, that's good. And BCI, evidently, if they already had 5, so is that the early ones? Could they, because if they have 5 medical licenses, they could then get 2. So are they going to be maxed out at their 10 dispensaries? Because from the way that I read the law, nobody can have more than 10 dispensaries in the state of Illinois.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that was my understanding. You can't have ownership of more than 10. So, I mean, I think a lot of the current players end up being maxed out. Mm-hmm. And maybe that'll change in the future.
Let's hope not, because I like that. It's diversity of the industry,
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would bring it down. I would bring it down to probably 5 or less or something.
So how much business can you do with 5 dispensaries? 15 million a year? More?
Plenty of business.
Yeah, I think you're gonna be okay. Well, like up here watching, we have the Have a Heart. It's funny how they've been working on this license angle, and it kind of go after people who are not. I don't know if what the bias is for who they chase, because we have this one Have a Heart that has 3 shops here in Washington, and they have one in San Francisco, and then we had another cat who what they try to do was, it was a beautiful store. You walked in, it was a store, and then the next door was a grow, and then the next door was a processor where you could like walk in through like a hallway and see all the other stuff, like kind of like how it was happening, how you got your plant or your flower. But they had to work on their loopholes of like 2 licenses, 3 licenses, and then because the walls had a door that closed, they were considered separate areas. I mean, it just seems like some BS that we're dealing with still here in Washington State. Can imagine in Illinois, you guys, with the ownership, that's going to be huge. A lot of players are going to be your medical side, I think, still too. That's what we've seen here. There's a lot of the medical people who will reestablish that capital are going to be the ones in the recreational, creating your guys' infrastructure and culture. That's kind of another thing is a lot of these big money players don't understand the culture. Like they don't give a fuck who went to jail or who got arrested or who died. You know?
That's one of the reasons why I don't necessarily negate the stoner image of Cheech and Chong and all that and think like, hey, we're trying to come up to something like that. I'm like, man, fuck that. Those guys were taking all the risks and you're getting all the benefit. And now you're trying to sweep them under the table like they didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree. I care about the culture of cannabis, and so I want to preserve that. I don't want that to get lost in, the expansion of the industry and things becoming, more consolidated and industrialized and all that. I like the, I like craft beers, like I don't go to the bar. I'm like, where are the Bud Lights? No diss to Bud Light, Yeah. Bud Light on tap, that's not what I'm saying. I like craft beers. I like craft cannabis. I want, more attention and detail and, to the plant and to my product. So,
well, as I say, I don't think you can ever even though winners write the history, they'll never be able to brush out the culture that exists already. Because, it was long ago that, it wasn't too long ago, rather, where I was, Tom was right under home road. And I was, you'd have conversations about, hey, do you like pizza? Pizza with extra green. Get like an 1/8 of pizza with extra green. There's a way that you had to live, right? Now I'm a grown man. I don't got to do that shit. And I can be like, hey, I'm going to the store, go get some weed. It's just like a beer. But the craft grow, like you're saying, like I like good IPAs. Like I'll be a stereotype fucking Northwest guy. Yeah. I like a good high ABV. My wife likes lagers. So I'm like, But again, because like the culture that we have, understanding what you like. You understand what you like because a bunch of us had to do something beforehand, shake hands, a deal, a handshake and a deal to get to where we're at, to understand the plant better. And that's why I always emphasize home grow as well, because not only will it give me a chance to make money, but it gives you a chance to understand, like, growing is fucking hard. You plant the seed, you take, there's a to B, nutrients, flushing, all kinds of things, curing, trimming. Trimming's a fucking art. My shit last year looked like it was like Mexican brickweed, but that's because I learned trimming techniques. It looks good in the beginning, dry some more, you're like, shit, that's horrible, and then you can refine it and whatnot. There's a lot of things to do with this plant, and with home grow, you give everybody a chance, I think.
Yeah, no, I support home grow. I support the expansion of home grow. I think anybody should be able to grow on their own, up to a certain amount, maybe, But
yeah.
I was gonna interject some audience participation, because it's like, they wanted some audience participation from Pyramid 7, and I figure we could get to one question and then discuss it and maybe wrap up, because we've been going on for about an hour. So, Brandon Yeager, what happened to the Federal Banking Act? I'm not sure what bill that is. Have you heard about Federal Banking Act, Akele?
Maybe means the States
Banking Act. Yeah.
Probably
the State Banking Act.
Well, and I think it's just a concern about policy. Like, right now, our home grow, we are in a I don't know what's the fucking, you guys know the words for, like, when they stop doing legislation one period and they're going to start up again in January.
Recess.
Is it a recess?
Yeah.
All right. So I just always assimilate that with court. Like, shit, they're going to recess. Like, now go smoke a cigarette or whatever. But so we're in recess, and again, when you learn about policy, you learn how fucking hard it is, and you get frustrated. Like, why it's easier to put people in jail than it is to get them out. Because Tom's been educating me as well with the whole House and Senate thing, bicameral, unicameral. Like, why can't just one person just tweet something and now it's done? But instead there's a layer process, and with that Safe Banking Act, people don't understand that now it's going to what, the House?
It's done with the House, made it out of the House, going to the Senate. So yeah, it's got to go through one to another. Like, people just assume, like, it got through. Like, people got excited, but we still got another layer, another hurdle. Yeah.
Some of that responsibility, lies on, media outlets to, they just send those sensational clips like, Safe Banking Act is approved. And, and they think, it's going to be law. It's like, no, it's approved by, the House. Now it's going to go to the Senate. So,
and then once it's through the Senate, it still has to get signed by the president, right?
Yeah, which I think, Trump would do. So
Trump would do it.
Well, what about President Pence?
Pence is not going to be president.
No.
We're not gonna impeach the guy. We're just gonna get him out of office next year.
You don't think
Bernie? Well, like that. Hey, it wasn't one of Bernie's things that he said he was going to try to legalize it effectively day one through an executive action?
Yeah.
Do you have the authority to do that?
This is outside of my wheelhouse. I don't, outside of my area of expertise, but I didn't know he did. But I'd like to see him try.
Yeah,
he tweeted that on 420, I believe.
Yeah, he released it.
Yeah. All right. Hey, I want to thank you for coming. We've been going on for about an hour. Where can people find you?
Oh man, I have a low presence or a small presence on social media. So
is that intentional?
Intentionally, yeah.
Well, promote the good stuff. You got the.
You can look me up on LinkedIn.
Nice. All right. Before we head out, I wanted to get to one thing on this. We've asked a poll about, because this is the second activist hour, which didn't work. And so we've asked them, like, what should we call it? The Cannabis Conversation, the High Oily Hour, the Sunday Sesh, or the Cannabis Congregation. And currently, the Cannabis Congregation is just killing it out there. So if you guys see this on the channel, please give it a vote. And other than that, see you next time.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, Keely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.